seconds. Okay, cool. All right, I guess we can get started. Okay, good day, everyone. Welcome to today's LinkedIn Live session on the topic The Future of Hiring is Data. Are you prepared? I'm Chavi, Content Manager at Recruit CRM, and I will be moderating today's session. I'll be mostly behind the curtains while our expert for today takes the spotlight. Today we have Melissa Kelly with us. Let me give you a quick introduction about Melissa. She's a seasoned expert in talent acquisition and the founder of MK Talent Advisory. With over 15 years of experience, she specializes in optimizing recruitment strategies for rapidly scaling businesses. Melissa is known for her proven impact talent strategy framework, which helps organizations streamline their recruitment processes and align them with business goals for long term success. So, welcome, Mel. Do you want to say a quick hi to the audience and a bit about what we'll be discussing today?
Yeah, thank you, Charvi, and thank you for the lovely introduction. And hi, everyone, and thank you for joining. So today we're going to be talking about data, and it's quite a big topic, but it is a huge subject, and so I'm not going to be able to cover everything around recruitment and data. But what I am going to talk about is not just about tracking traditional metrics. This is going to be about real usable insights, data that you can actually use to help improve decisions, identify gaps, reduce bias, and also plan for the future. As I say, I've broken this down into around 4 parts. And I think just before I get started, just a quick question to you, just to think about, is when was the last time your recruitment data changed your mind about something? And while I'm going through this, perhaps you can be asking yourselves, what could you do, even if it's a small amount of data analysis? What could that small amount of data analysis achieve in your organization? And so firstly, I think it's important just to talk about the market in general. So our current environment is marked by economic uncertainty, no new news there, rising costs, shifts in the workforce and client behavior, but also the rise of AI is really forcing companies to rethink how they grow and how they operate. And data is really at the heart of this shift. And so what does this mean for you? Well, immediately it means that internally you need to clean your data, structure it, ensure it's accurate. And without doing that, any attempt to use data for data-led decisions for future planning is likely just going to fall short. And so in order to make better hiring decisions, improve candidate sourcing, develop a tech-enabled process, this is an essential task. And this will change and revolutionize the way that you operate recruitment. But we need to think bigger than that. Recruitment actually serves to, add or, contribute to growth in a business as well. And so clean data used properly will cut costs, will boost efficiencies, it will improve your customer experience, and ultimately it will drive profitability. Now, we all know recruitment or traditional recruitment methods have changed, and they're much more focused on automation and AI. But before we all start going out and blindly buying new tech and investing in AI, we do need to get our data in order so that we can make the right decisions and buy the right technology and AI that's actually going to support us and our processes. And speaking of AI, this has brought a whole new area of data that we now need to be thinking about. We need to think about how we're tracking it, how we analyze its outputs. And you may have seen the headlines, such as the recent lawsuit against Workday. And this has really prompted wider conversations about how AI is being used in recruitment. And so we really need to think about how we use AI responsibly. And to manage some of that risk, we really need to start auditing our recruitment systems, understanding how AI-informed decisions are actually being made in our systems. We need to be training our recruitment teams to work confidently with these tools, and also just speaking to our tech partners and understanding how they work and just getting some transparency from them. Now, most of our systems and technology are AI powered now, like Recruit CRM, is a AI powered technology. And all of these technologies are designed to enhance the recruitment experience. And all these providers will have guidance that helps you to manage and audit your recruitment at any time. And so it isn't that these guardrails aren't in place. It just means that we need to understand how we use it. We need to know our responsibilities in recruitment when using it. And we just need to be mindful and considered about the adoption of AI. And so those are some of the considerations that I think we need to, have in our minds when we're thinking about data and into the future. So moving into the next section. So in this section, I'm going to talk about tactical, practical and strategic uses of data. So day to day, most of us and our teams are tracking the basics. So we're looking at our time to hire, we're looking at our cost per hire, CV to interview ratios, but real value comes from when we go deeper. So it's great to have these metrics and these stats on our reports. It's great to show these high level numbers, but unless we're diving into what those numbers mean, then it's just numbers on a page. So one of the examples I can give you here is when we're looking at our conversion data. Now, conversion data across your hiring funnel can be an absolute goldmine for information. So when we're looking across that and we're saying, okay, it takes someone this long to get through our process, great, stick that on our report. We want to be delving into that data and looking at where people are dropping out across our pipeline, asking questions like, why are they dropping out? Can you see any patterns that are forming? Where are the bottlenecks that are slowing down our process? It's not always just CV stuck at hiring manager stage, even though I'm sure that happens a lot, or I know it happens a lot. And even more critically, we need to start looking at who is dropping out. So if your data is showing you that candidates from underrepresented groups are consistently dropping out at certain stages, or you can see that they're being dispositioned disproportionately, then it's time to start asking some questions. So we need to be asking ourselves, how inclusive is our process? Are our processes accessible? How inclusive are our interviewing teams? And at any point, are we unintentionally signaling that people maybe don't belong within our organizations? And then we need to think about how we mitigate this and what changes we need to make to be more inclusive. And this is just, an example of how you can go deeper within your recruitment data. But the whole point is that unless you're diving deep into your data, you wouldn't even know that these problems exist. And then you can't implement initiatives to resolve them. And so by using practical recruitment data that we mostly all have within our CRMs and ATS systems, that practical data can really help us to make tactical operational decisions and implement initiatives that kind of optimize what we're doing. Not only that, but by understanding your data, by understanding your bottlenecks, to understand where some of the problems are, this helps you to make decisions on what tech you actually need, what technology is actually going to support your process and help you solve some of these problems, instead of just buying the tech that's nice and shiny and bells and whistles. And I do see this a lot with companies that are kind of investing in new tech and not really understanding what it is that they need from it, and therefore end up with a system that isn't actually optimized for what they need it to do. And so moving on to strategic elements of recruitment data. So I see strategic recruitment or recruitment data as things like future planning. So looking at your workforce planning, internal mobility, your skills first hiring strategy, market insights, all of those things that drive real strategic decisions. And so data can help you to answer some really critical questions. So when you're in your planning stages, who do you need to hire? Where should you be hiring people? What you actually need to hire, and then how you're going to execute it. And a good example of this is skills first hiring. So skills first hiring has been buzzing around for some time now, and I think people are starting to kind of put the work in to achieve this. But to truly achieve a skills first hiring model, the first thing that businesses need to do is look inward. we need to start looking at our internal data. So mapping our internal skills, forecasting the skills for the future. And then what this will enable you to do is identify the skills gaps that you've got, which allows you to then look at market insights and say, okay, well, where do these skills exist? Where could I possibly find these skills? It can give you the opportunity to look at how you will reskill the workforce or upskill the workforce. It will also identify where there's transferable skills. Dual roles, dual hatting is definitely on the rise. And then potentially where you need to buy new skills. So, going externally into the market. And what we're really seeing from this approach is that it starts to create a really collaborative way of working internally. So where recruitment, L&D, and recruitment teams have worked in silos for so long, this is forcing those teams to have to work together because everyone needs to understand the impact of skills, the skills gaps, and then work together in how they're going to bridge those gaps. And another concept that's gaining popularity, which I learned the other day from a good friend of mine, Matt at Horsefly, was around talent density. So this is the idea that with the right structure, automation, and upskilling, we can do more with less. But you can't do that unless you understand where your capability is today, and you can't do that without data. And recruitment is so critical in those conversations. And that's why recruitment really do need to have a seat at that table, because they're the ones that are closest to the market, candidates, the skills, understanding how difficult it is to actually hire a job, what the lead times are, etc. And so it's incredibly important that us recruiters and TA teams are, involved in those future planning conversations. And then obviously on top of all of this, we've got AI transformation and how that's impacting the global workforce. And according to McKinsey, 30% of work hours globally could be automated by 2030. Yet only a third of leaders feel prepared for that level of change. And again, this is where recruitment data becomes really strategic. So those conversations that I mentioned earlier that need to happen now between HR, L&D, recruitment teams, those conversations are really fundamental to answering questions like, do we build, buy or borrow? What are our biggest skills gaps within the business and how fast are those gaps growing? What roles are most likely to be impacted by automation? And what does that mean for our workforce and for future hiring? Look at locations. So which locations are offering the best balance of skills and cost. And then again, where we might reskill, relocate, or completely redesign our roles. Now, there's a lot of information there, and you might be thinking, well, that's great, but how on earth do we actually do this? If only there was tech out there that could actually map this for us. And luckily, there are lots of tools out there. The technology space has advanced so fast. And that's what most of ATS and CRM tools are now AI powered. They now have great insight tools that are already embedded in our systems. And so you should look into that. I did speak to Horsefly Analytics, so shout out to them really quick before this session, because they're one of the leaders in the market around workforce insights and analytics. And so I did speak to them to kind of understand what is happening in the market around data. And if you're not familiar with them, then I would definitely go and check them out. But also, people like myself, I'm an independent TA advisor and consultant. And so people like myself are here to support you in building these things out that are really specific for your business. And so, again, just going back to the conversation I just mentioned I had with Horsefly. So again, another thank you, because they've been doing a lot of client research around all of these things, and their technology is now kind of paving the way and being able to answer these questions. And they gave me some statistics based on the things that I've just spoken about. And I'll give you the client example that they gave me, because I think what this does is really show the impact that data can have. And so based on their client example of, so it's 100,000 employees, so a big enterprise business, but they worked out by doing all the analysis and looking at all the data that if they were to automate just 0.5% of their workforce, that could be a saving of 32 million. If they were to relocate 2% of their workforce to lower cost regions, that's a saving of 39 million. And then if they were to reskill 2% of their employees within roles that are at risk of automation, then they could save around 30 million. And so, yes, there has been a tool that's helped to work this out, but that tool needed the data to go into it. So, you know, there's a huge numbers, and you can have the tool, but if you don't have the right data to go into it, you know, it's useless. And so this is a really good example of when data is used well, how you can plan for the future and optimize your workforce. And so I think, you know, the cost of not doing anything is those huge numbers that I've just spoken about. But not only would we miss out on huge savings and an optimized workforce, but what we end up doing then in recruitment and talent acquisition is that we continue to hire reactively. We miss out on great internal talent that we could be reskilling, upskilling, and retaining in our business. Might be in a different role or a different skill set. And we fail to just act on the root causes of the problems that we have within our recruitment process. And then we continue to make big investments in technology without clarity on what we actually need. And so the bottom line here is that, you know, data can transform your recruitment from reactive to proactive. It can transform it from transactional to strategic, and it helps us to optimize, avoid costly mistakes, stay compliant, and make better decisions for our teams, our customers, and our business. And so that is my whistle-stop tour of data. And again, slightly different take on data, and not looking at kind of like the day-to-day metrics, but really thinking about how we can use our data within recruitment and TA to really propel our businesses forward, to start planning for the future and not get left behind as things pick up. So yeah, I just want to say a really big thank you to Recruit CRM for hosting today's session. It's been great to jump on. I haven't done a LinkedIn Live for a while, so thank you for having me. And I just want to say to anyone that is listening, if anything today has resonated with you, I would love to explore how data can transform your recruitment strategy. And I'd love to keep the conversation going. So yeah, please reach out to me if anyone wants to continue to talk. I think I'm staying on, Charvi, for some Q&A. So I'll be quiet for a second and let you kind of take the floor.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mel. I think that was very informative. You covered some very important pointers. And yeah, thank you so much for the wonderful session. I'm sure some of the audience members have some questions. So now, like Mel mentioned, that we would open the floor for some questions and a live Q&A. So if anybody in the audience has any questions for Mel, now is the time to drop them. And in the meantime, let me see. I think we have some questions. No, nothing yet. But Mel, I had some questions. I was listening and I had a question in mind I want to ask you. You mentioned the importance of clean and structured data. So, how can companies start the process of cleaning their recruitment data, especially if they've maybe never prioritized it before?
Great question. Yeah, so data can sometimes just be kind of left to the wayside. And we know it's there, but sometimes it's a bit scary. To recommend is just gather your data wherever it's being held. And I would be looking at, what are the different sources of data that you're getting and using. What I would then do with your data is look at categorizing that data. And that might be looking at, conversion data, time to hire, ratios, and then start going through that data and looking for any anomalies or clean it up. Basically, if there's any data missing, look to fill those gaps. But also just and then once you've done that, is then just taking the time to analyze it. So what is it telling you? And I used D&I as one of the examples in the talk, but it could be that you've got the hiring manager blocker is something that always comes up. And so if you do see those types of patterns forming, is thinking about what then can you do to initiate some change. So whether you need to upskill your hiring managers, do some training around their responsibilities, the impact on candidate experience if they're not going to move through the process, and all of that kind of stuff. But really it's gathering the data, categorizing your data, and then analyzing it to understand it a bit better and see what it's telling you.
All right. Thank you, Mel. We have a couple of questions from some of the audience members. The first question we've received is, what advice would you give to recruitment teams just starting to integrate data into their decision-making process? I think you kind of answered this question a little bit, with my previous question as well. But if you have anything to add on, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the advice would be just is how you can use that to provide insights to your stakeholders. So, for example, when I was at PwC, one of their initiatives was to switch to more regional hiring, which is great, and there's lots of reasons for that. But what we needed to understand then is, well, what skills and roles are they looking for in those regions? Do those skills even exist in those regions? Do we have a presence there? How would we compete with our competitors in those markets? And then develop a bit of a plan. So that was, for location-based recruitment. When it comes to advertising, recruitment spend, analysing where do you get your candidates from, who goes through that process successfully, where do you get dropouts? Sometimes different sources for different roles perform better. And so analysing that data can help to inform where you spend your money, basically at the top of your funnel and at the top of your kind of attraction and go-to-market strategy. But I think it's just continuously looking at that data, seeing what the trends are, seeing what's performing well, and then adjusting and pivoting your approach accordingly. But it really depends on what your goal is and what it is you're trying to achieve and what issues you find within your own processes. That will inform the data that will help you make those decisions, if that makes sense.
All right, thanks, Mo. We have one more question. They're asking any common mistakes recruiters make when relying on data, and how can these be avoided?
I guess what I've seen when I've led teams is recruiters just not understanding the data that they're looking at, or I guess if you looked at your time to hire and it's like, oh, it's 42 days to an offer, that's great, but that doesn't mean that there isn't improvements that can't be made within your process. And so I would always urge to track your data, track your own performance, and look at your own conversions, look at your own time to put someone through a process, and just don't just take it for numbers' sake. I would always say to be curious, be inquisitive, look at your data, see where there's opportunities to improve, and then implement changes that affect positive change.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Mel. I think those are the questions that we have. If anybody else in the audience has any questions, we'll wait for a few seconds. Yeah. In the meantime, Mel, I think I have just one final question from my end. So you touched on the cost of doing nothing when it comes to recruitment data. Can you elaborate a bit more on the financial implications for businesses that continue to neglect data analysis in their recruitment strategies?
Yeah. So I think where investment in like technology is concerned and then not optimizing that, I think there's real cost implications with that. I was actually talking to a recruitment agency the other day, and they spoke to me about how they can optimize their data, because actually they implemented Salesforce but they're not really doing anything with it. And so they're not using the data to inform them of their performance. The C-suite are like, well, we're making money, so we're okay. But actually, the team don't know how they're performing because they don't have proper metrics to look at. They don't understand where their bottlenecks are. They're not identifying areas where they can improve their client services and retention of clients. They're not understanding what their CV to interview ratios are. And so what you're doing there is that you're not optimizing your process in any way. So you've made a really huge spend on technology. It's not been adopted and it's not being utilized. And the whole point of kind of having good systems and processes in place is so that you can be more profitable, that you can optimize your services, and also have a high performing team by using that data and metrics to inform performance, training, learning needs, etc. And so I think there's so many areas where not tracking data can impact your business and profitability. And so and I think sometimes it isn't even down to money necessarily. It could be down to how you're attracting candidates, how you're how you're engaging your candidates throughout your process, and if they're dropping out and they're like self deselecting out of the process, then why is that happening? What is it about your process that's making these people drop out at that stage? And so reputational damage, not being an employer of choice, those things are really impacted by not using data, as well as the obvious kind of monetary value elements.
All right, thank you so much, Mel. I think those are all the questions that we have today, and thank you so much for answering those questions so well. Do you have any closing remarks for the audience members before we wrap up finally?
No, not at all. Just I hope I know we've done a bit of a whistle stop around data there, but if anyone would like to connect with me on LinkedIn, please do. If anyone wants to continue the conversation, please reach out to me. I love this stuff. I love talking about it. I love looking at ways to improve it. And so, yeah, just thank you so much for your time. And again, Charlie, thank you to you and the team for having me on today.
All right, thank you so much, Mel. You're amazing. And yeah, like Mel just mentioned, don't forget to connect with her on LinkedIn and check out her company website as well. We've dropped the links in the chat on both YouTube and LinkedIn. And in case you'd like to learn a bit more about Recruit CRM, you can visit our website. If you're interested in exploring our ATS and CRM, you can easily book a free demo with us today. And we'll walk you through everything. We also have a no commitment, unlimited free trial. You can experience the tool firsthand using this. Don't forget to follow us on social media as well to stay updated on upcoming LinkedIn Live events and other exciting news. And all of these links are currently in the chat, so you all can engage with it. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and we can't wait to see you at our next event. All right, thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.